Alright, so I wanted to look at this today. This is a 14-day challenger, and I wanted to talk about how to polish your work. So, how to stay away from contrast but preserve detail. So, as you guys know, there are 3 ways to create detail. 3 really, really important ways. Probably the main ways. I'm sure there's more than that. There are more than that. There is more than that. Damn it. But these are the ways that are the most used. The first way is to shrink your brush. Shrink brush. So these are not in any specific order. These are just ways in which we can. Alright? Shrink brush or add contrast and telemarketers, add contrast and sharpen edges. These are the 3 ways. The most important way, probably the first way you should do, is to sharpen edges. So if I were to give a number 1 to any of these, is sharpen edges. Shrinking the brush would probably be the last thing, because we usually like to keep that. The brush size shrinks as you start painting, and as you finish, the brush size should typically go back to small. If you have to make large corrections at a small brush size stage 4 hours into the painting, it means you didn't focus on core shadows early enough or do enough work. So shrinking the brush would probably be the last one, because we want to avoid shrinking our brush too soon. Adding contrast is the next best thing. So after we've created this nice sharp edge between these 2 values, we make one of them just a little bit brighter than usual to bring in even more detail. So this super sharp edge right here, this attracts the human eye. This is a way to create detail. And then shrinking our brush, of course, is to add detail in the smaller volumes of, like, the smaller objects on the face, hair, stippling skin tone or skin pores, drawing wrinkles. So the first 2, sharpening and contrast, are the best ways. Typically, you don't even need the 3rd one once you've done those 2. You don't really need to shrink your brush at all after you've successfully done the first 2 stages. So right now what you've done is you have sharpened edges at the same time with sharp small brush and high contrast. You're using all 3, and what it starts to feel like is information overload. It becomes too overwhelming. So what I'm going to do is find one of the midtones, use a darken layer to bring these values down, because you've overused your highlight. One of these, you've overused them of the 3, and if you use all 3, they have to stay balanced. So even though your style is pretty rigid and geometric, which is it's a really good look, it still might cripple the success of the painting or the read of the painting. Typically we don't say success of the painting, what we do is we say the read, if the read is effective. So you were really patchy before, and what we want to do is, before we get all patchy like that, we want to blend where we're supposed to blend and use edges where we're supposed to use edges. If we use too many edges too soon, we forget that there's supposed to be a fine balance between organic and geometric. Oops. Okay. So the nose was a little bit, I guess, upturned. The problem is that the septum is usually much lower than the rest of the nostrils. The septum is lower and the nostrils are higher because this is an object that moves forward in space. So typically this is closer to us. The septum is much bigger along with the tip of the nose than either side of the nose. And usually there's a teardrop shape moving down for the nose. So you did probably use a reference for this, but this is what the nose looked like before and after the correction. Okay? So this is just some basic stuff that I use with my visual library just to bring out a more believable organic pattern. Or like mechanics, basic anatomy mechanics. So I'm just blending away where we have fat. So fat pockets are allowed to have gradients. That means that because they're so fatty, they have like a more spherical shape to them. And fat is like it's like a padding. It's like insulation. So we need to blend where we know these happen. So around the eyes are very clustered. There's a lot of mechanics running around the eyes, and a lot of edges and a lot of function. So we're going to have a lot of pieces stacking on other pieces, like gear work, happening in there in the eye structure. So usually we have lots of edges there, but long stretches of face that don't have any features on them, the top of the nose, the cheeks, the chin, or the forehead. These are the areas we like to keep as gradients, especially if they're dome-like, like the forehead is very dome-like. There are edges on either side of the face, but they can be very dome-like. Alright, now that we did that, we can see that you have, in a ways, drawn that halo around the eyebrow that I warn against. It's a very dangerous little halo. I'm not sure why we have it, but one of the reasons why some students have that halo is because they're afraid of what to do with the space around the eyebrow. They feel like the eyebrow needs its own little stage. And this is what you're doing here. You need to remember that the focal point is this crosshair between the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. And the fact that you use contrast everywhere as well before contested this this focal point, this cross right here. And so we keep away these crazy highlight spikes, these excessive highlights around areas that are typically in shadow. And the head is in 3/4. The outer side quarters of the cube, the sides, the temples, and the two front sides of the face. So the face is split in half and then split in half again. And the second halves are the ones that face to the side. So this L shape right here is what helps us glide the eyebrow structure into the side of the face. Now, it doesn't matter what kind of face you have. These are the gradients that we need. And I'm going to continue these gradients off into the fatty pockets right here and preserve the edges where they're supposed to be. So typically what I'm going to do here is oh, come on. I'm going to try to duplicate that edge again on the side. Just like that. Again, I'm so sorry about my sniffles. It's very gross. I'm just creating that edge. Go back to my soft brush. And then now that we've worked with a really, really low intensity contrast, we haven't used the next stage of the painting, of the detail methods to detail, which is contrast. We haven't used that yet because we're trying to perfect our edge work where we can and can't blend. And as you can see, it was extreme before. So I'm going to bring it back exactly where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to start erasing away at the layer I made, that darken layer mode. I'm going to erase starting with the light spots. So the tip of the nose typically has the most highlight on it. Sometimes it's second to the forehead. And then the inner eye along with the cheeks. And you can see your highlights are very scattered and very systematic. Almost feels like paint by numbers instead of actually sculpting. Do you know what I mean? Like you've outlined where this highlight goes and you've given it only that area to exist in. Alright. I'm going to decrease contrast in one other way by getting a lighten layer and highlighting away at many of these cast shadows. So this cast shadow right here can be just a little bit lighter inside, because there's a secondary light source here, this extreme light you've included, that is diffusing it. Okay, and then this part here, I'm probably going to diffuse that. Alright, so what we're doing typically is we're getting rid of this excess contrast you've depended on to make this read. Merge that down, merge that down. And we still have so many areas where, because if you have this paint by numbers feel, I feel like you don't have radial shading in your vocabulary yet. Radial shading, if you haven't caught the definition of that yet in my sessions, it basically means that we are building up the highest, the lightest point and the lowest, darkest point along a z-axis, in and out, kind of like like a pile of sand. You slowly pile the sand, it eventually reaches a cone shape. So we're piling on these values together. By the way, chat, live stream chat, please make sure that you stay on topic. If you don't, you will get banned. I'm sorry, it's been really strict lately because people like to just get off topic. So the light is coming from top down. So what I'm going to do now is just try to balance it this way. And between the eyebrows, there is typically a shadow. So yes, I'm painting with a soft brush, and as many of you know, you probably experienced this, soft brush is very problematic with preserving your edges. It kind of just overblends for you. But the best thing to do is just keep in mind that, you know, the brush doesn't help you or not help you. The brush is just a tool. You're supposed to know where edges are, not the brush. So if you don't know where you're placing your edges or where to place your edges, and you depend on the accidental edge work that comes with a rough brush, then that's not very skilled. That's not very, like, a conscious way of painting something. You're going to depend on the accident whenever you're lucky enough to make it. So be aware where your high points are. Be aware where your edges are. Don't let it be an accidental buildup. So people who overuse soft brush have an excellent blendedness and radial shading to their painting, but it's too much sometimes. Sometimes it's just too soft. And people who have edge work have a great edge work in there, but sometimes we're just missing a little bit of that softness and that organic pattern, that organic taste, or that organic touch in the construction of the painting. So always try to find a balance of both. That's why I keep my hard edge brush and my soft edge brush all really, really nearby me. Really close. They're like really close to each other in my brush set. So I'm always jumping between them. So I know I need a super sharp edge here on the side, and I'm just adding that in. Also, completely get rid of your lines. You need to completely omit them. You are rendering, so the presence of the line, whether you're conscious of it or not, is going to hinder your production. This excessive contrast you had is the perfect example of, like, you're still symptomatic of line dependency. So when we get rid of that, suddenly we realize that edge was hiding the fact that the outer sides of the head were really washed out. We need more shadow on either side here. Okay. So this means, first of all, if you're doing a 14-day challenge, please make sure that you are giving yourself enough space in the canvas. Those guys just way too far. And he wrote my name too, Istebrak. My name is so clunky. It sounds like a bunch of spoons falling down. Or like, you know, when you do dishes. Alright. So we've rendered some areas. Some of these areas are still very choppy, but I feel like I should just leave them alone, since they're radiating or orbiting around major areas, like high traffic areas in the face. And one other reason why I know for sure, just as a, you know, as if I'm diagnosing where you are currently, you currently have a line dependency, and you're completely in need of radial shading studies. The nostril here is just a dot. Can anyone tell me why it's a problem to just have a dot instead of a cavity shape? Why it's bad to just have a dot in a dark spot? Can anyone answer that question? Yes. There was a wetness feeling in the painting. There was definitely that wetness that was happening, and that's from that high contrast. When we have high contrast, we use it in areas that have high specular potential. So that means that shiny, mirror-like, wet, oily areas. Why did I do color and then I did? So what I'm doing right now is just darkening the white of the eye just enough. Don't worry, it won't look bloodshot the whole time. It's just a little bit, just so that the waterline feels like a separate part. And then I'll erase away where his eye is typically brighter. But I'm just waiting for the answer. No depth, it looks flat, because it stops representing depth, but rather a black 2D point in the face. Exactly, because it's a cavity and radial shading is physics. Yes. It goes from a sculpted volume to a 2D stylized shape. Exactly. But I'm looking for a very specific word here. When we have like a black object, what is that typically? It's a line, it's a stamp, it's a basic shape, like a sticker shape, it's a clip art shape. And yes, you mentioned that the 2D is completely missing, but the silhouette is there. You're telling me that it is pure black. It's telling me a different story about what's happening with the light source. So if we stay dependent, and this is why the 14-day challenge is so amazing, because you can deal with all of these before you do a masterpiece. Imagine you have to do a masterpiece for an employer or something, and you had this radial shading problem, and you're giving them this work that they paid you for that still has almost no radial shading in its technique or its delivery. That's really bad. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to be consistent with our light source. So yes, cavity, yes, radial shading, yes, three-dimensional, but you remember that the only way this can be pure black, just a pure dot. I know it's a dark spot, it's supposed to be dark, but it can't be pure black if we're seeing this much here lit up. The only way it'll be completely dark is if the shadow extended so far. So let's open Portrait Studio real quick. I mean, I did make it so I could teach better. All right. So right now we can see the light in her upper eyelid, just that socket area. But when we start doing something like this, that's when this is no longer radial. That's when this just becomes a black hole, because the lighting isn't allowing anything to bounce back up and create that cavity look. So the cavity happens because there's still light accessible as the cavity happens. It's like a pit. Sorry, I'm like out of breath right now. A very asthmatic day. When we have this kind of lighting situation, there is no more bounce light to allow that gradual movement. So you're being inconsistent with your light source here by having this random smack dab in the middle black spot for the nostrils. Okay. So other areas that need to be blended out is this part of the nostrils right here. This should just slowly descend into or ascend into the cavity. So you need radial shading. Radial shading happens when we have this cast shadow, that's not fully taking over the face. It's like a minor, little medium size cast shadow, I can say. And I'm just gonna complete the cast shadow you started right there, and then connect it to the rest of the face, the rest of the nose. So that entire lower part of the nose is not getting any light. So don't worry, it's not going to stay this dark, but just so I can connect it and then create the edge I need. Just like that. And then erase away. But always, if you're erasing away large quarters of the face or large sections, please make sure you're erasing away along making sure you're zoomed out. Really strong vantage point. So before, after, it was just too light in the lower part of the nose. And I'm just trying to make it match your style everywhere else. So just like that. And then for the edges of the lips as well. Anywhere where we have a cavity like this, it's a pit. It isn't just a small little dot. And this is line dependent work here. This excessive, no radial shading, lots of lines, it's all symptomatic of line dependency. It's all the same illness that all artists suffer from. However it manifests, and trust me when I tell you it manifests uniquely between every student, it's still the same problem. So you see I'm slowly creating that dark point. We're all so panicked. We have so much anxiety. We're in such a hurry to, just use as much read as possible to get as much read as we need, that we end up using too much contrast way too soon. I'm not really sure what this is, but I can just accredit it to like a mustache. And just as I mentioned before, I'm just going to get rid of my name. Istebrak. Sounds like the name of like a monster truck. Something monster trucky, I don't know. Alright. So I'm gonna lasso this, select inverse, hide, and then I'm just gonna burn the edges. That line wasn't letting me see. I needed more darkness on either side of the face. We need to descend this face into the shadows. It sounds so mythic, but descend into the shadows. The chin is annoying this person. Well, we'll talk about that in a second, because I think you did miss out on the general beard shadow in the face. So this, I'm going to put it on darken. So half the face is usually in the shadow. Always. If the light is coming from above. We don't get the same amount of contrast either way. So we just, we throw that shadow in, and then we erase away where we do need light, which is only on the high points of things. But that might have been the reason why the chin was annoying you, because it wasn't in a shadow that it belongs in. I think just this whole face here. This whole thing needs to be, oops. God damn it, crop tool. Needs to be expanded. This canvas needs to be expanded, sorry. Okay, so before, after. Oops. Nope. Nope. There we go. Before. Go there. Before. After. So there is like this really like a obsessive use of, let me just make them align more, contrast, and I'm not sure like how to explain where it's coming from. And when we do that, we don't open up the space for us to slowly build on the highlight. So let's say that we did want that old highlight back. Now I can erase away and get it back exactly where I want it. So just take a look at what I'm doing. I'm erasing away at the layer I made and letting some of the old layer come through, but only where the light is really important, where the light is needed. So the cupid's bow here, some of the lips, some of the chin, some of the forehead. So now we have like this nice balance between not blending, geometric edges, blending organic patches, contrast only where we need it. Because this, if you're working like this now, this is going to be the foundation. This is how your work's going to be affected for the rest of your career. You're always going to have this blind spot where you use too much contrast and not know you're doing it. And now that we're using highlights where we really need them, we're no longer in danger of a dependency on the lines. Now we know where we can use some edges. So erase a little bit on the inner corners just so we can get that light. And where we are allowed to have crazy contrast is just the white of the eyes. We're allowed to have some contrast there. And there's like many other levels you can take this in. This can go in many other ways. You can see the nose before was just a little bit off. Yeah, I can't erase away at the new nose. Alright. So, this is a really great day 1 for 14-day challenge, and I wanted to catch you early since this was your first day, I think. And just remember that you have to get rid of the line completely. This line is going to confuse you and not let you know whether or not you're using the right amount of contrast. When we get rid of lines, we notice that we need just a little bit more contrast that the line was taken care of. The line is gone in the real world. There are no lines in the real world. Just edges. Stay away from excessive contrast. Alright, so I want to take a look at another one. Another 14-day challenger. This one right here, the jawline is really, it's like missing. So I'm not sure if I can pull it off with liquify. I might have to just abort mission on liquify in a second if it's not reading. Because it's so close to the jaw, the lip. So what I usually do is I get the old so it's okay if he has an expression now. I'm just trying to get this jaw to work and then I'll erase away. He's like, I'm not sure I'm impressed by your critiques right now, Istebrak. Honestly. Alright. Really, really cute lip. Alright, so because he's a male, again, you're not studying anatomy. The 14-day challenge is not about the shoulders, it's about the head. So please, please stay away from the shoulders. Do not draw them unless you're ready for them. Just focus on the basic stuff. That this head looked really, really like the shoulders looked hunched. So what we didn't have before was just this jawline that was just missing. Damn it, did I really just do that? Did I really just keep erasing and erasing until it disappeared? Alright, so before, after, before, after. Right, the jaw was gone. And this happens when we lose our teeth and we get older. The teeth are no longer there to push the jaw lower and sit right where it's supposed to on the joint. So this jaw was completely gone. Alright, apart from that, I think your contrast is just a little bit too careful. So in this case, you need more contrast, but just a little bit more. Don't go crazy. So all I mean is make the background just a little bit lighter because as you know, if you watch my other videos, a light environment is really important. And the light environment is three-parter: the light, the background, and the object itself, the main object. And usually we're so occupied with the main object we forget that the color of the canvas affects what we do with the main object because it's the light source that's causing it. The light is illuminating the room as well as the object. And this is still really, really careful, really nice value right here. So now you know that he is actually not pale, he's pretty dark. Because if we bring it back up to a neutral light source background color, we know that it's not just a dark room and he's dark because the room is dark. And if we lighten it up, now we know exactly what we're drawing. So don't do a dark room when you're trying to do a character study. If you're trying to exhibit a character, you don't just show them off in a dark stage. You try to show off every little bit, so you show off you bring in some light so that we can see everything. Alright, now we know that the eyes are too dark. The eyes are too dark. Everything just feels washed out. There isn't enough contrast. There are almost no cast shadows for your next days in the 14-day challenge. I don't think this was a 14-day challenge. I'm not sure. I think it was. You have to start bringing in some sharper cast shadows and some edges and some contrast. Good job staying away from tiny brushwork. Very, very good job. Maybe I can just quick fix the contrast. Some of these contrast issues you have to paint in. There isn't always a quick fix for them. Sometimes we can cheat just a little. Alright. The lash line is too thick, that's why it got dark so fast. The lash line was too thick and too dark. So before, after. Alright, we need the background to be light enough or else we don't read the lighting situation. I would make the background even lighter because I'm trying to show this character in a lit room, and because I brought contrast on him, now he's even more visible. It's a good character setup. It's a good room for characters to show up in. Or to be showed off in. Sorry. Okay. So delete that. Save that. Alright. For this, again, the same thing. In a 14-day challenge, your background should be lighter than your main character. We're not trying to do 14-day challenges in like this really editorial type dark studio with black curtains all over the walls and a single light shining on the camera. No, this is like a pure study, purely scientific, almost like medical journal type of study for the muscles and structures and anatomies and biomechanics of a face. So we are trying to keep the room lit enough so that this can work like a lab. This is a lab. Write that back to me. I want everyone to remember this. The 14-day challenge is a lab. Is a lab study. You know how if you're like a chemistry student and you have labs, right? And you go in there and you do the little experiment and you write a little report about what you found. The 14-day challenge is a no creative pressure, all science, all observation lab study. All right, and if the lab is dark, you can't do it. As for the character, I think that there you have a lot of issues. You're sharing value words. You're not building radially. You're building slightly radially, but I think it is dark to light. So when I say radially, I really mean when you're not doing, like, so it's like there's radially and there's what you do when you're not doing. What are you doing when you're not drawing radially? You're doing gradients. So everything, like let's say this is the edge of the face and this is the nose. Before you hit the nose, you bet your butt it's going to be a gradient. And then the nose to the other side of the nose, you bet your butt it's going to be a gradient. All right, one side is always light and the other is always dark. This is like a two-dimensional way of drawing, just limited to X, Y, and Y. You just draw up and down. That's it. It's always something to another side. But when you include the z-axis, you can go in and then go back out and then go in a little bit more and further and then go back out here. So if we rotate it, and this is the z and this is the x and this is the y, but this is the x, y, and z, you know, we have some pieces here this way and then some closer this way. So it means there's a distance. There's like a distance between point A and point B. So let's pretend this is point A and this is point B. And this is point A, and this is point B from a different angle, from a different side. And this is further away than this. There's distance and space here. So as we build it up, this pile of sand gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it has more and more radial shading on it. So this low pile of sand is being built radially. So we slowly reach the high point. When we don't do that, we get issues like this and this being so flat. Dark to light, dark to light, dark to light, dark to light, everywhere. There's no radial shading whatsoever. So form studies, especially the cylinder and the sphere, help you develop your radial shading. So if you don't know what radial shading is, you don't know where to start in fixing your radial shading problem, all you have to do is just start drawing some cylinders and spheres. Without lines, render them fully. 14-day challenge is a lab. Yes, thank you. You're all such good students. Alright, so we're not sharing value words with the nose anymore. This seems like it's an Asian face. So let's use a quick example. I'm going to darken. I'm sorry, I sound really stuffy now. I might have to just take a quick break. But, no, this is supposed to be darkened. This is supposed to be normal. So I'm getting rid of that excessive contrast, and I'm going to make the background light enough. The face is just an oval. The silhouette of the face, it would read as a cue ball before it reads as a human. So if this was nothing but a silhouette, and the background was white, and the object was black, I would not know I'm looking at a human being. I'll select inverse. Alright, so we really need the background to be light enough so that we know what we're looking at here, and we really need this character to have like cheekbones and stuff. I can't paint it extensively. We're gonna run out of time. Why did I do the neck like that? Am I like 2 years old? All right, sorry. Okay, so this is what it should look like, and this is darkening the excessive contrast we have here. So just these changes alone have made has allowed the anatomy to read that much more. All right. And then as for these eyes, they're just a little bit too big and a little bit too symbolic. And these hooded eyes, let me show you really quickly how you can bring in radial shading into the face. Wrong layer. This hooded eye right here. Let's just pretend it's hooded. Instead of drawing from left to right in gradients constantly, we're throwing one brush stroke, and then another, and then another, another, and we're slowly building up this sand pile. So it starts to read like an actual dome. Let me get my edge brush again. Just erase away where it caused some trouble. Cast a shadow here. Zoom out. Now we have, this is how I expect you to radial shade. This is how I expect radial shading to look like. We slowly build up, fucking Photoshop, I hate you so much. Okay. This is how I want it to look like. So we have that lower crease down here. And then we're slowly building up the highest point. And even then we haven't used the lightest point we can. We haven't used the lightest of the light. Because we're building it up. One of these circles goes in the other, and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to use dodge tool to slowly show that. Same exact thing with the cheek. We're slowly building up the lightest point to where the light source is. The eyebrows, they can be a little bit more involved with the brow bone. So the brow bone comes first before the eyebrow, and then it descends into the sides. The brow bone should be a little bit more present. The edges of the face should have more presence of the jawline. So the silhouette should be a little bit more cube-like. So you're missing this, and you need to shave off this and this. And then the jaw. This is, as you saw from the previous critique, this is just a dot. This is just a dot. So you need to slowly, so this is the teardrop of the nostril. We slowly build up the darkest point. And this is like the darkest point. So we don't really end up using all the dark that we have. So that's my critique for yours. I'm going to keep these scribble marks on it. If you want your old piece back, or your critique back, just message me on Facebook. I give back all of these pieces. Here in this, it's really just reorganizing and making the background a little bit lighter. So again, this 14-day challenge is a chance to study everything. This means that you're also studying a light environment. What happens when a form study floats in space and in relation to the background and the light source. Alright, so this whole background needs to be lighter. So now you can tell this guy's a pretty dark-skinned fella. And with that, I'm going to start reorganizing the face. It seems like a threat. You know, when someone's pissing you off, you'd be like, yo, I'm going to reorganize your face. Imagine someone said that to you. You don't fix this radial shading problem, I'm afraid I'm going to have to reorganize your face. I just feel like such a punk when I say reorganize your face. Alright. So the eyes are really close together and really low. Alright, so I'm just going to try to seam this back in. So it's just a little bit tricky seaming these back in. The eyes are looking in different directions. They're not really focused. I think the eyes may have been duplicated from side to side. I'm not entirely sure. So you see how low the eyes were before? Typically we want the eyes to be above the ear line. This is because when we're looking straight at a face, the ear line is kind of just below the eyes. But when we tilt this down, so let me fix the lighting. When we tilt this down and then the head is suddenly looking lower, or we're on a higher step and we're looking down at them from bird's eye view, the ears tend to be a little bit higher. And then the exact opposite applies. The ears are really low when they're in bird's eye view and we're in worm's eye view. For those who don't know what this is Portrait Studio. So how to apply that here is that you had straight front view head, but the ears were in a place that suggests we were in a different perspective, but in only the eyes. Get it? So now that we did that, I feel like the eyes make just a little bit more sense. There's still many issues here that we're seeing when it comes to, like, let's say this shadow here, or the width of the nose is just a little bit feminine. Especially considering this is a male face that you're drawing here. So if you do take on a gender for the 14-day challenges, you have to make sure that you know what gender you're drawing. If you're gender confused, or if you don't like to be, called gender, I don't think designing male and female characters for a game industry is a job for you. But if you're okay and you don't really have that vulnerability, and you're okay with knowing that there are possibly two genders only in this particular game design field, or this design field, then please, yes, take on one gender and then practice it and perfect it, so that if someone comes to you and offers you a job to design this assassin fella who's got a dark past, first of all, you don't want to give him a really slender feminine nose, and you want to give him the bulk and the ugliness that he needs. When I say ugliness, I mean it very objectively here. It's just the term that means we're not drawing an elf face, we're not drawing a fairy face. So if you're okay with that, if you're okay with the fact that there are two sexes, two genders currently biologically, then these are the changes I recommend you make in order to make this guy look a little less androgynous. Androgynous is not good for character design. Alright? If you have an obsessive, kind of like a consistent androgyny in your character design, you're going to be in a lot of trouble with where your portfolio applies. So please write that back to me. Become more diverse, be more versed in the differences between the genders, portrait-wise, biologically, where it happens on the face, the signatures, how to make this lip looks very masculine because the upper lip is very thin, and upper lips for males tend to be very thin. They're not as plump or I still have trouble figuring out a good word for lips that are, like plump, I don't know. Juicy? I don't know. So I'm just going to cross the eyes in just so that they look like they're looking at something. They still feel a little bit close to each other. I mean, they were so far away before. It just seems like, if we correct it, we're gonna have some of these issues still preserved here. All right, androgyny. Yes, androgyny characters aren't good for character design because they're not going to let you explore or even apply your portfolio to practical uses. Androgyny is not practical for character design. And if you're, if you had a big old fella, big old juicy hot dog loving American fatty sitting in front of you, I'm sorry for all you beloved Americans. I live in the U.S. too. But if you have just this old 40-year-old man who's balding, he's got his hot dog in his hand, you're at a fair, and you were hired to draw caricatures, and he comes and you end up drawing him looking like an anime princess, and his eyes are really big, and he looks so girly. At that point, you missed it. You don't have a very accurate rendition or power over portraiture at that time. And that's because you didn't explore the signatures of an ogre and the elf and how they conflict each other, and you can't really cross them over like that. I have a whole video on it. It really goes into this in depth. But these are the changes I recommend. The ears are in front of the temples, which is not possible. The ears are behind the temples. So the temples come first and then the ear line. So this line here, they don't overlap it. And yes, he is a man, so we're allowed to have a nice thick neckline, but remember, this is like bodybuilder level. So again, you don't just explore one body type, just like we don't just explore one gender. Being able to explore the skinny, thin, pencil neck, scrawny fella is also good in case you have to design one of those. Alright, so these are the changes I recommend. Remember, it's really important for your 14-day challenge to have a lighter background. Oh, good lord, I nearly really fucked up, guys. I nearly really messed up. Like, really nearly messed up. Big time. I nearly lost this whole thing. Ah! Oh my gosh. Okay. That's okay. So before, his eyes were just so low. after. And yes, just like before, for the 14-day challenge, please, 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 please don't. So yeah, don't draw the shoulders. But yes, before I forget, ask me questions about the 14-day challenge so I can answer them here for those who don't know what the 14-day challenge is. Because I think I need to make a video on it once and for all. I thought the simple Q&A on my website was good enough, but please ask away questions about the 14-day challenge that you would like answered, and I will answer them here. So typically what the 14-day challenge is, you draw a portrait for 14 days straight, and you have to get a critique between all of those days for you to graduate on to the next day. Typically, I try to provide in my critique hours a full critique of your graduate day. So either day 13 or 14, it doesn't really matter for me. Just as long as it's one of the final days so that we can talk about all together where your issues were and how to improve. Usually the day 1 and day 14 are like a massive difference between them because the improvement is phenomenal. And it's helps you have trust and a new respect for critiques and a new respect for your community. You have to make sure that you have a community in your education process. There's always a member providing you with a different outlook on your work and breaking your tunnel vision and bringing it down and showing you where issues that you might not have seen before. It also helps, it's a focused study, so there's no color, no props, no hair, no accessories. You can add a scar or two, but really it's recommended that you don't have anything other than just a bare face. This is a lab study of what a face does in light. And it's the focus studies. That means that you're focusing all your attention for those 2 weeks on just portraiture. Your brain will do the rest. You just have to show up. You'll eventually realize that this is all you really need to do for every other kind of topic of study. So hands, just dedicate a whole 2 week on hands, get some critiques, and suddenly you'll be a master at hands by day 10. So this kind of study method, accidentally, you're kind of, you accidentally learn how to study well. And you get better at portraits, and you apply the study habits and this good study technique and this discipline everywhere else in your art. But yeah, let's see what everyone's asking about it. Is a realistic style the only one accepted? Typically, yes. When we do realistic, when we learn realistic, we can always take a step back in order to do something unrealistic for an employer or for our portfolio. So it is recommended, yes, absolutely, to learn how to cast some shadows, to learn how to detail, to learn how to draw an eye that can function, to learn how to draw eyes that don't look like they are anime eyes or flat eyes, to look like that, for eyes that look like they have a mechanics to them, that they can move as a joint. So absolutely, to learn radial shading so the nostrils actually look like cavities and they can breathe. This is all realism. Realism is function and function is realism. Write that back to me. So a 14-day challenge, absolutely I recommend for you to push your realism and push your threshold as far as possible. Now he's freaking hot as fuck. Yeah, he is. He has a feminine jaw. I think that's because the jawline needs to be just a little bit lower. So we just do this, and then he gets that kind of masculinity back. Let's see what everyone else is asking. I don't know. Does it have an ending date? No, you can start and end it whenever you want to. There is no set date for it. The only thing that has set dates are the community challenges, the themes that I'll be talking about in a sec. Do you have any specific... Okay, someone just asked me, do you have any specific videos that could help you shade? All of them I talk about something, or just look for radial shading, contrast. Those are always something, those topics are always something that includes some kind of shading technique that I teach. Someone said I should try different, like, color or male thoughts. Different, like, color or male. Yes, you can do the 3/4 view 14-day challenge. You can do a colored 14-day challenge. You can do a gender-only 14-day challenge, like one gender per challenge. It's typical that we stay in the same gender for the before and after, the same age for the before and after. Yeah, that usually graduates who do that or have the most successful success. Try doing other ethnicities as well. Absolutely. And different skin tones as well. So darker skin tones behave very differently in the grayscales than lighter skin tones. All right. Can I also do the 14-day challenge traditionally? Okay. There has been someone who has been submitting a traditional 14-day challenge to the Google community, and we've been rejecting it. Not because it's not allowed. It's perfectly allowed. But typically, what we don't want to see are sketch marks. We want to see that you're trying to shade. You're not drawing. Drawing a 14-day challenge, though it will work because you're drawing the same face for 14 days, isn't really a study of light environment. It isn't really a study of function and form. I mean, you can if you really sat there for hours and erased away and used gouache and used like blendable pencil crayons or in grayscale or something like that, and you manage to really build up your values. But you can't radially shade in traditional as successfully or easily as you can digitally. So if you don't have a tablet by now, it's really better for you to just get a hold over one. I'm going to try to run a contest for the winter where I give out a tablet, but I'll let you guys know about that soon enough. Just like a really medium Wacom tablet, the one I would buy if I didn't have one already, which is the medium no button Intuos, the one that used to be a bamboo. That's the one I would give out, definitely. But yeah, if you don't have one, it's really best to just start saving up. They're really not that expensive. I know $200 seems like a lot for some people, but considering how much money we waste in games on Steam, on candy, and on random shit that we don't need, considering that we could possibly wash the dishes for a couple times a week and get our mom and dad to pitch in like some money for the tablet and show them that we really care about this. Your parents will appreciate it. You're not like you're asking them for a tablet or a phone. I mean, like, you know, like a Apple tablet or something like that. Like, you're actually asking them for a real tool, for a real skill you want to pursue. I know my parents took me seriously when I started talking about tablets and stuff like that. So it's really not that expensive, and you don't have to buy a humongous one or a Cintiq to get basic access to the digital world in your art career. But if you don't have one yet, really work on trying to get one, and I'll do my part to get you guys one as well. I mean, I wish I could buy all of you tablets. I wish I could buy everybody a tablet, but really try to stick to traditional. It's really difficult to pull off all the stuff that you need to learn, and it's difficult to critique a traditional 14-day challenger. It's not easy. We don't know what is pencil and what the pencil isn't allowing you to do, and what is knowledge and what skill and all of that, and what you lack there. So it's best to just try to stick to digital for that. I bought an Intuos 3 many years ago, and it's still good so many years later. It's definitely worth it. Save up for a Wacom tablet. Yeah, I have an Intuos 5 Pro, and I hate it because the buttons on either side are so useless. They're just useless. If the buttons were at the top and nice and out of the way, I would have just loved that, but I think they've improved on their designs recently, so yeah. How proficient should one be at using lines and construction to attempt starting the values? It's not so much a proficiency with lines, just so much that the lines are a tool. The thing that you're supposed to be proficient is the geometry. So before you start values, Kamikolo, please remember you need to think about the geometry. So the difference, so before we get on to this, what we typically do is perfect this. And then after we perfect this, then we move on to this. And then eventually we move on to this. So what I mean is the line, you can use the line to draw all of this, or you can just shade it, whatever you can do. But typically what you're supposed to be doing is easing into the high poly and slowly teaching yourself to see the geometries before, and you stop seeing a line. You stop accidentally drawing with a line dependency, drawing flat. You start thinking about radial shading so that you can get some real values, some real shades, and some interesting stuff happening in your drawings. Should I do the 14-day challenge with references or no references? And that's a tricky question, and a lot of people ask that question. I recommend using a reference for the nose, and a reference for the mouth, and a reference for function in the eyes. But I don't recommend using the same face for every 14 days. So no, it's not allowed to use the same face to reference every 14 day. No, it is not allowed to do photorealism studies. If I see a different kind of ethnic face, of a different gender, a different age group with all of your 14-day challenge submissions, so 14 different faces, that's a fail. What you're supposed to do is draw the same face, perfect the same face, that face you can go to every time you need to draw someone a portrait or something or do something. You can have that one face for you, but you can use a reference for how the nose functions. You can use a reference for how the eyes function. You can use the same eyes throughout, or the same nose, but typically you're not going to get it right the first time, or the second or the third or fourth or fifth, maybe by the sixth and seventh, and then by then you're just polishing and perfecting till the 14th. So don't use the same face and study the face photorealistically for 14 days. It's supposed to be, all of it is supposed to be a challenge. If you have something to lean on so excessively as a portrait reference, you don't really get the benefit. You're supposed to be doing a lot of this from your visual library. And the references are a little crutch or a little bit of a guide, but they're not. You're not doing a photo study. This is not a photo study. If you do anything photo study like, you know you're doing something wrong. Hey Istebrak, how do the programs differ from 3ds Max? This is a closed program. It's not a modeling program. It's just a closed. The models that you have are the only ones you have to work with. It's not a modeling program in any way. What it is that it's designed for those who want 3D access but are not 3D modelers and don't have time to learn Maya or ZBrush and then have a portrait they can rotate with light and reference. So you have access for the camera angle. You have control over the light source. Then you have control over the model as well. So you can make the ears bigger. You can make them larger. You have a lot of control over a lot of these features. What's going to happen is very, very soon, and we're closing in. We're basically finished. I wish I could just, be really super transparent with the progress of 14-day of Portrait Studio. But so far we're done everything. There are a couple of corrections to do for the models. We just have to go through the list and make sure the list is perfect. Put on some randomizer limits so the randomizer doesn't give you weird faces all the time. We have new models for the male and female, and we have a new UI completely. So everything is done except for the final list of blend shapes, just so we can go through them and review them, make sure everything is perfect. And randomizer limits. The lighting is perfect, the shadows and the no major glitches and arm and hand movement. Now you have expressions in the coming update, and you're going to have body movement. You're going to have a full body. So this is a pure overhaul update that's coming up. That's why it's taken so long, and we keep giving you a deadline and we can't reach it. It's just too much stuff to mediate with just a 3-man group. But I'll keep you guys updated. I'll post a video very soon with a demo. The demo is available. I have a demo. But we're just doing those final little corrections, so the demo is a little bit more smooth when I display it on YouTube. But there will be a demo soon on all the updates. Those who currently own Portrait Studio, you're going to get the update, the overhaul update for free. Those who don't own it will have to pay for the new price that it comes in. I think that's pretty fair. Because you guys pretty much stood by us when we released in March or February, I forget, and you guys have been amazing since. We've done a lot of updates since then, but I think those who currently bought it and supported us, and there's such a small group, and you guys gave us so much of your support, it would be unfair to charge for the update. Yes, there are going to be expressions, some pretty good expressions. The 14-day challenge, the point is that you're trying to really get a good understanding of the universal face without looking at one. Excellent, Jenna Squirrel. You will make mistakes, but after the critique, you can correct them on the next day. Absolutely. And you can't draw on the same face over and over again for 14 days. Yeah, 14 days. You have to start it over from scratch. Every painting is a new painting. You can't just paint over the last one. If you guys have been doing that, you've been cheating. This is the point is so that you can measure how much faster you're getting. If you already have a pre-painted image you're correcting, the process is like 15 minutes to 20 minutes. But if you're starting from scratch, you're going to see, wow, it used to take me, an hour to do this. Now it's taking me 45 minutes. It used to take me 3 hours. Now it takes me an hour. So start from scratch on the 14-day challenge. All right, so what's so if you're trying to ease into rendering, you've done a lot of pencil work for a while, yes, I do recommend easing in with blocky heads for practice. Absolutely, Rithira. Yes, that's what I want you guys to do. Ease into the process of rendering. Is there a way to get Portrait Studio for a lower price for studying students? Since the price is going to go so high very soon, we will be offering some kind of program application, obviously application program, like we can apply for it, to get it for free or at a lower price. It depends really in what way you're struggling. But it would be unfair for us to just give it out for free. It would also be unfair to give it for such a high price for everyone. Everyone is, I guess I'm socialist in that way. Everyone has different incomes. They should be treated differently. But because this is the value of what we believe is the value, we believe it's more expensive than what we're currently selling it at. But we're trying to be fair, so we've already down the price so much. But we believe this is the worth of it currently on the market. But because, it'd be nice if you guys saved up and then got it. But if you cannot in any way get it, and the way things look for you financially, you're probably not going to own it for another 4 months. And those 4 months, you could have really used it to improve. The application process will be there for you to apply to my email personally through the form submission on Squarespace on my website. On the store, you can scroll down and find the form application, like the form submission, and then just submit and ask, basically state why you're having issues. We're probably going to follow up with a couple questions, just basic questions, and if we feel like you've deemed it like you have to get your own version for free, or get your version for free, then we'll just give it to you there. But I think that's the most fair way. We only have so many we can give out in a month for free. So lots of questions today. Ask now. Got it. I just thought it was a set rule, no ref during the 14-day challenge. No. It's recommended to have references no matter what you do, but don't depend on them too much that you're doing photorealism. During school, they've tried to beat it into our heads, use reference. The pros are all doing it all the time for new subjects. Yeah, it's also good to just test what you can do just with your mind. We haven't finalized what the new price will be yet, but it will be a little bit higher than what it is now. Not a little bit, by a lot. Definitely not like hundreds of dollars, but it'll probably hit a higher price than what you see it as currently. So I think that's it for today. I tried to cover everyone's, but I don't think I can get to everybody today. So these two pieces I'll probably leave for next time since they're colored and outside of the 14-day challenge theme. And to buy Portrait Studio, you just have to go to istebrak.com and go to the store. And that's where you'll find it. But thank you everyone for coming today. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.